All right, so that's what we mean by Indo-European and by cognates, right, and by how comparative linguistics works. And what I have down here now, if you continue down farther, is some more sets of cognates, just to show you some more examples. And so notice that all these over here on the left, these are all words that are part of Indo-European languages, English and German and Latin and French and Spanish and Greek and Sanskrit and so forth, right? And so you can see how similar they look, right? Like night, nacht, noctus, nuit, noche, nuptas, nocta, right? So they all look similar enough that you can see that they come from the same origin. But then look at these languages over here. These are non-Indo-European languages, Hungarian, Turkish, Arabic, Japanese. They come from some other source, from some other ancestor language. And look how different they are. Like, look at the word for night. I don't even know how to pronounce these, and they don't look at all like the Indo-European ones. And you could go through this list and you can see the same thing, basically, that all the words over here, you can see that they're cognates. They're related to each other. They come from the same origin, whereas these words over here are very different from the Indo-European ones. Now, one other point that we have to make here with this outline and understand is, notice that with some of the Indo-European languages, on this Indo-European side, some of the languages seem closer to each other than others, right? Like, look at English and German. Let's just look at the word for foot. Foot and Fuß, very similar. They both start with F. But now look at French and Spanish. Pied, pied, both start with P, and they're very similar, right? So notice that, so English and German in general are very close to each other, and that French and Spanish are very close to each other. Now, why is this? What's explaining this? Well, English and German go back to the same sub-branch of Indo-European, right? They go back to a sub-branch, which is their common ancestor. What I mean by a sub-branch is, I mean a kind of a step that's intermediate, a stage that's in between Indo-European and the modern languages that we know. So in other words, what I'm saying is that when the Indo-Europeans first started breaking up and migrating to different places, well, one group of them went towards Northern Europe and ended up settling in Northern Europe and developed their own kind of dialect of Indo-European. And then much later on, that group also broke up. And from that group came English and German. Right? And so this Indo-European branch that settled in Northern Europe, we refer to their language as Proto-Germanic. We say that they were a kind of they became the first Germanic peoples, and their language was Proto-Germanic. And then when that sub-branch of Indo-European broke up, then they spread out to various places in Northern Europe and beyond, and then lots of other languages developed from them, like English and German, and lots of other languages also. There's a whole group of Germanic languages, a kind of a family group and they're all part of this Germanic branch of Indo-European, right? So they're Indo-European, but they're also part of this smaller subgrouping called Germanic. And then similarly, well, we know why French and Spanish are so similar. That's because they go back to the original ancestor of Latin. But a similar thing happened with Latin that I just described for the Germanic branch. The people there was a group of Indo-Europeans who also settled in Italy, right? And some of them, and so they developed their own languages there, right? They're their own kind of dialects of Indo-European. And because they were in Italy, we refer to those languages as Italic. Now, one of those Italic languages that developed turned into Latin. And then the Latins, or the Romans, right, they developed the Roman Empire. And then the Roman Empire were spread out into Southern Europe, right? Not so much Northern Europe, but more Southern Europe. And so that's why then French and Spanish and Portuguese and Italian also, of course, are all they are kind of closely related to each other because they're all part of this basically Italic set of Indo-European dialects, right? So originally in Italy, there was more than just Latin. There were other closely related languages as well, and there are still dialects in Italy that are different from Latin, or that may not have come from Latin, but they would be part of this They came from this Proto-Italic grouping, right? So notice what I've got here then is under Proto-Indo-European, I have these sub branches, these kind of groups of these groupings that are kind of grouped together, Indo-European languages that are close to each other because they developed in the same place or spread out from the same place.